Hello, friends. Welcome to our very first Compassion Chat of 2022. My name is Susan Marshall. I am the author of Mom's Gone Missing, When a Parent's Changing Life Upends Yours, and your host for these monthly Compassion Chats. We get together the fourth Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. Central via Zoom, so nobody has to leave their home on a free Wisconsin night like tonight. Yep. And here's Rod. Welcome to the chat this evening, Rod. We are recording this, so we would ask that in the initial portion of this chat, you would mute yourself. We will have time at the end for questions and comments and the rest of you to chat with our guest. I am very, very pleased tonight to welcome and introduce all of you to Dr. Cheryl Woodson. Dr. Cheryl Woodson is a geriatrics physician. She's an educator. She is an author. 3 books now, Cheryl. And 5. Whoa, we've got to catch up on some of this stuff. Good for you. She is here tonight to chat with us about family caregiving. She also was the caregiver for her mother, who had the journey through Alzheimer's, as she'll share with us this evening. We will update with a little spoiler alert toward the end of our chat tonight. She will be back with us and soon. So, Cheryl, let's not take up a whole lot of time yammering about stuff. Welcome. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me. How are you?
Very, very well. We'd love to start these chats by getting to know a little bit about our guest. So if you could kind of start us off, tell us a little bit about your journey and what brought you to the work that you ultimately settled on for your profession.
Well, I'm a North Philly girl and from a very tight extended family and knew my grandparents very well. So old people were not bad. They actually protected you from your parents. And in medical school, I was tired of 20-something white male residents calling 80-something-year-old Black women by their first names. And that just made me crazy. In my residency, I was tired of them not offering certain kinds of tests or treatments to people just because the day that was on their birth certificate. And when I became a senior resident, I could stop that on my service, but I couldn't stop it on anybody else's service. And that's how I got into academic geriatrics. I wanted to teach people about older adults. And I started out as director of the fellowship program at the University of Chicago and realized that's too late. Fellowship is too late. So I went to Northwestern to work on all training. So I had medical students and residents and everybody, and that was fun. And then my son got tired of mommy driving an hour and a half. And I moved to Ingalls Health System and worked there and eventually started my own solo private practice called the Woodson Center for Adult Healthcare when you've outgrown the kid stuff. And it was the best fun I ever had. It was just really wonderful. And that's how this happened.
That's fantastic. We are delighted that you took that journey. You also were the caregiver for your mom, and you and I have spoken about that journey. Almost everyone on this chat this evening is either has been in that position, is currently in that position, or certainly can see themselves at one point being that kind of a caregiver. We know mother-daughter relationships can be complicated. So tell us a little bit about what your experience was with your mom. You said it's a 10-year journey she had.
Yeah, I started out as a long-distance caregiver. She was in Philadelphia. I was in Chicago. And I had neuropsych testing the first time she asked permission to interfere in my life. My mother and I had been like this since high school. And when she started asking me stuff rather than telling me stuff, I went, And she was still driving. She was managing her money, but she just wasn't the person who raised me. And the first neuropsych testing was too early. I mean, she's very smart, so she played right above it. And then the second one, about a year and a half later, I decided never to do it again because she was very upset at how poorly she did. And my family, God bless them, they took care of her for a long time. Right there in Philadelphia, her brothers and sisters, my cousins, because it's a million of us, and they were doing it. And then the crack addicts came in and took all of my father's tools. My father had been a carpenter, and took the food out of her house. And we made sure she always had $20 because they'd come and ask for money, and it'd be worse if she didn't have any money. And that's when I moved her. But the first time she came out to stay with me, she set my kitchen on fire, and my daughter was 18 months old and ended up in the hospital with a GI virus. And I couldn't find anybody to take care of mother, to stay with her. And my ex and I had made a decision that my daughter would never open her eyes and not see somebody she knew. And so all of my girlfriends were busy, and I had to take mother to the hospital with me. And she decided she wanted to go outside and smoke. And this is the University of Chicago, which is in the hood. I mean, you walk over to Cottage and, and I knew that she would get beat up or stolen or something. And I had to make a decision between my mother and my child. And I sent her back home the next week because I never wanted to be in that position. And then by the time I brought her back, it was time for her to use the nursing home. And so we were able to place her.
What, Cheryl, when you said, the first neuropsych test, and we learned this, we had taken mom for that same thing. And the diagnosis we got was MCI, right? Mild cognitive impairment. She said, it's not a big deal. It's not going to affect her daily habits. We already saw that it was. As a physician, help us as caregivers understand, how do you push back on that? What questions do you ask? How do you say, yeah, but this is what we're seeing?
Well, there's a thing that Dr. Golovic did at a conference that I really like, that there's 3 ways to look at this. One is CRS, can't remember stuff. It's like, where are my keys? And MCI is, what am I looking for? Oh yeah, my keys. And Alzheimer's is, what's a key? And I think what you have to say to people is that the function is different. It's already different. You're saying that it's not going to affect her, but it's already affecting her. And there honestly isn't anything to do. There's not another test or another pill. You have to wait it out. But in that time, you can start preparing and always doing, what will I do if? That's how you get in front of this. What will I do when she can't do X? What will I do if this happens? And that's really all you can do. I mean, you can push back, but there's nothing for them to do for you.
You know what? I wish I had known you 5 years ago, because I had no idea what to do now, much less next. What are the things that we should be thinking about and perhaps preparing for? Oftentimes, and we've talked on these chats, the tragedy is we often don't do anything until something drastic has happened. And there we are, and it's, Mach 2 with your hair on fire. We don't know what to do next. So help us prep a little bit. What are those next things we should be preparing for?
I think the first thing is to make sure the advance directives are done. Make sure that somebody has been designated with the legal right to make decisions if that person can't. You got to make sure that that's in place. When I made the diagnosis of any chronic condition that wasn't going to get better, I would ask families, what would this have to look like if you couldn't do it yourself? What would have to happen for you to say that this is not something I can do? And not just something that might happen to the person you're taking care of, but something that might happen to you. You need a hip replacement, or your daughter gets sick and you got to take care of your grandchildren. I mean, what would make this impossible? And that's the line that you draw. And as you get closer to that line, some families can recruit extra resources and move the line. But some family members realized the line was back there. They were already beyond what made sense. And I think it's really thinking about, okay, what will I do when she can't drive? What will I do when she can't do grocery shopping anymore? What will I do if she can't manage her money anymore? And try to put a plan in place.
So this takes me to a really tough part of the caregiving journey, particularly with siblings. Mom knew she couldn't drive anymore. After there was a silver alert issued, she was found the next day after driving 2.5 hours from home. She wasn't scared, but she knew that she didn't want to do that again. 5 siblings are saying, she's fine. She got confused. Don't worry about it. So it's one thing to have the conversation with the individual you're potentially in the position to care for. You said you got a million, relations, family. How do you deal with them?
You get what I call, one of the concepts I've created is the level of care prescription. This is what your team gives you. There's 10 questions, and the answers to those questions point you right at the target of what this person needs. And so it's not your baby sister saying this. The doctor said it. The level of care, this is what they say is going on. And I had my mother's car stolen. She wouldn't stop driving. And my cousins and I, it disappeared from in front of the house. Just, and it's hard when you're a good kid. You're a good kid. You always went to school. You ate your vegetables. You did. It's hard to have to lie and say, yes, ma'am. But
stolen, that's pretty.
It disappeared. It disappeared from in front of the house. And it was down the street because a friend of mine had it. She saw it, but, it didn't connect. You have to be willing to, you have to say, do you want her to be mad at you, or do you want to get that phone call? Do you want to get something horrible happen? And it's hard not to be a good kid. But I also talk about hearing what they say with big girl ears. You really don't need their approval. You really don't. It's not the same thing as when you were 8 or when you were 10. You don't need them to think you're a good girl. You need to keep them safe. And that's hard.
Yeah, talk more about that, because that really is hard, particularly in mother-daughter relationships. The roles are flipped.
No, there's no role reversal. There is no role reversal, because when my mother didn't recognize me, and I don't know if you can see these, but these are her wedding rings. And I had them set 7 years into a 10-year caregiving relationship. When she looked at me and said, "Do I know you?" I thought I was going to die. Okay. But there's no role reversal, because after she didn't recognize me, if I spoke too sharply, she'd have slapped me just as fast as she would have when I was young. She's always mom. She's always mom. Even if you're taking care of personal care, there's still mom,
I get that. So I get that. And yet there is the reversal in terms of you become the caregiver, not the care receiver. And that's emotionally extraordinarily messy until you get to the big girl ears. And
it is, but part of the big girl ears is that at 36, you've had yourself as long as she had you. You're grown. You are already. Before she got sick, you were grown. So just like parents need to let their children go and stop having that interaction, children need to let their parents go. I mean, my son is learning that. It's like, Mom, can you babysit? Nope, I'm going to a writer's conference. Mom, can you babysit? Nope, I just got off a cruise. It really is about separate from caregiving. Who are you? You're not just a caregiver. Who are you? What else are you doing to be who you are, to maintain your joy, and to say that this is part of what I do, but it's not all that I do. And I think that's where that comes from. But my mother, bless her heart. I mean, the reason I'm who I am is because she's who she was. If I had been born to a different sister in this family, I wouldn't have been here. That was my mother. She didn't graduate from high school. She was 5'2", and most of that was hair, because she got the Angela Davis afro and never let go. But I heard her say to a principal once, "You might have a PhD, but I'm MOM." I mean, that's who this lady was. And before she got sick, my father died 2 weeks after I started medical school, very suddenly. And when we were putting everything together for the funeral and everything, my mother redid her will and all the things at the same time. And she said to me and my brother, "There will come a time when I won't be able to make good decisions. I won't be able to take care of myself. Whatever I say to you at the time, I want you to know that I raised you, I know who you are, and I trust you." Changed our lives. I'd have had that car stolen anyway. But she was a woman. She was a woman from the time, as long as I knew her. So I had to be a woman. I had to make the hard calls. And she's not my mommy anymore in that I can't crawl in her lap, but I shouldn't have been crawling in her lap anyway, So if she hadn't been who she was, I probably wouldn't have this kind of attitude. But I don't, if you've seen my LinkedIn profile, I have pictures of my 95-year-old aunt walking. I mean, that's the people I come from. But it also means that you have to get behavioral health counseling to make sure that the ears you're hearing with are big girl ears, to work out those childhood things. Because it's not, I mean, my mother and I never reconciled over the stuff that I thought that was hurtful to me because she got sick and it wasn't a fair fight anymore. So I had to resolve that somewhere else. And
I think that's a really, really important bit of work, because particularly if our mothers were not like your mother was, and I know that for several of us, there's a whole lot of guilt tripping that goes on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But if you've accepted this responsibility, because you don't have to, you're not anybody's legal guardian. You do not have to do this. If you've accepted that responsibility, then you have to move your stuff. And there's a chapter in the book about whose stuff is this anyway, moving that so that you can make those decisions, and having your little girl ills and scars healed in another way, because it's no longer a fair fight. She can't help you anymore. And the truth is, because of who she was, she couldn't help you anyway. Right? She wasn't going to all of a sudden become a warm, feeling person that said, oh, I understand. That was never going to happen. And a lot of times we try to revise history. Not going to happen. So getting that behavioral health support is critical.
Cheryl, you just said something also that I think really defines compassion. She can't help you anymore. And you choose to be the person responsible for caring for needs that sometimes we're simply guessing at, because they cannot speak intelligently or articulately about what we need. So talk a little bit about that, the constant or near constant feeling of inadequacy or uncertainty, maybe. Am I doing the right thing? Am I not? Is it too fast? Is it too slow? Talk to us about that a little bit.
I think, again, this is where the level of care prescription comes in. We're afraid as caregivers to do too little and commit elder abuse and neglect. We also don't want to do too much and impose on a senior who's not really all that sick, and you just don't know where the target is. The level of care prescription points you at that target. The first 5 questions define the problems, like what's wrong with this person? Why is it wrong? How much is fixable? How do we fix that part? And how do we deal with what's left that's not fixable? The second 5 questions outline the care plan. Well, what kind of care are we talking about? So is somebody coming up to shave them, or are we dealing with pressure sores? Well, how much care? If we're dealing with pressure sores, are we just moving to avoid things, or are we dealing with wounds that need to be cleaned and packed? Okay, well, how often? If we're cleaning and packing, is it 3 times a week? Is it 3 times a day? And the fourth of the second set of questions is, how long am I doing this for? And this is where physicians fail families, because we don't know, only God knows for real. But we do know that what's happening is going to continue for the rest of this person's life, that a shot of penicillin isn't going to make this go away. And I think families would have a much more realistic idea of whether they can do this if somebody said, this is going to be years, not months. And then the last question is, how much education does the caregiver have to have? Can the grandson come up and write the checks twice a week or twice a month? Or do I need a nurse at the bedside 24 hours? When you have that information, you know exactly what you have to do. And it takes the panic away.
So where would we find that tool? I'm assuming it's in one of your books.
Oh, it's in the book, but you can also download my caregiver survival packet when you join my community on my website. It'll tell you how to do that. And this is Woodsonism. So you can't go into your doctor and say, give us a level of care prescription. They won't recognize it as that. But if you get the answers to those 10 questions, you'll know what you're doing.
So I will get that from you offline and share it with our community, because that's exactly the kind of tool that we want to bring to this group to help alleviate that uncertainty. So that's a fabulous tool. Thank you. I feel better. talk about sibling and family conflict as it pertains to care.
There's a big conflict. I have 5 keys to caregiver survival. And the third key is don't ask, don't tell, won't work. You have to tell people that you need help. And you have to be specific. And again, this is where your level of care prescription comes in. It's not your baby sister. The doctor said, mom needs A, B, and C. I did A, so I'm not dumping on you. I did A. Can you do B or C? I'm not telling you what to do. You have a choice by D time. And the reason you say by D time is so when they don't do it, you get to go do what you were supposed to do. You make your decisions. And when they get in your face about that, you say, the doctor said, mom needed A. I did A. Weren't you supposed to do B? If somebody had done B, I wouldn't have had to go in this direction. And it's specific because I need help with mom doesn't work. You have to be very specific about what you need. You also can't lean on reads. And that's from a book by Lori Beth Jones called Jesus in Blue Jeans about leaning on people who are unreliable. If people are continually unreliable, stop relying on them. Maya Angelou says, when people show you who they are, believe them. Dr. Cheryl says, the problem isn't that your sister won't help you, it's that you keep expecting her to. And the third caveat in that one is don't accept responsibility without authority. I mean, if you are on the line doing this stuff, the person who's in charge of the resources has to be your lockstep partner. My brother didn't think that I was doing this correctly. He thought I was being too clinical, is what he said. And, I was clipping mother's wings and blah, blah, blah. And she set my kitchen on fire, And I said to him, you are not going to sit on the fence and throw stones at me. You're going to get on this side or help me, or you're going to get on the other side, renounce your part of the power of attorney and give her to me, because I won't have responsibility without authority. Or you can have both. You can have responsibility and authority. You don't like how I'm doing this? Okay. And then I went and cried because I don't talk to my big brother like that. But in my experience, when you're clear with people about what you need and you go ahead and move when they're not accountable, or when you insist that you're not going to have responsibility without authority, they either step up and help you or they go away. That's my experience. And that A, B, and C is a broken record. I did A. Weren't you supposed to, and when you hold people accountable, you're specific about what you need, you hold them accountable. And again, you deal with your internal family dynamic hurts in behavioral health counseling. It doesn't matter that your father bought him a car. Not today. It really doesn't. And you all can deal with your inter-family dynamic issues after this person passes. It's irrelevant right now. It doesn't help you right now. What we have to do is focus on what we agree on, and that is that we want to give the best care.
So important to hear you say these words. I think intellectually, most of us can understand that. We can be clear, we can be precise. One of the things that I realized in listening to my siblings and dealing with that family dynamic is that they each had a relationship with my parents that was different than mine. I don't know what that was. I can't know what motivates a question, a concern, a rock thrown over the fence, right, as you say. And to your point, which is so important to hear, understand, and really take in, at the moment, it's irrelevant. What needs to get done?
Right. And oftentimes when we ask for help, we want to tell people how to help rather than value what they can do, So did you ask for them to help you, or did you tell them that they have to do blah, blah, blah? And so whenever a caregiver tells me that nobody will help, I ask them what they said the last time they tried. What'd you say to them, And you don't know. As you said, everybody's relationship is different. You don't know why your brother won't help. I mean, the father who was such a great father to you might not have been a great father to him. And it doesn't matter what actually happened. It only matters what he thinks happened or what he thinks didn't happen in terms of his behavior. And you have to value, maybe he can't do hands-on, but can he pick your children up from school? Can he get the oil in your car changed? value whatever he can do rather than tell him what he's not doing. That just doesn't help anybody. But the underlying resentments that we have from childhood get in the way. And that's where behavioral health counseling helps. But also that level of care prescription. When I gave the level of care prescription, I often had 5 people in the room and somebody on a conference call because they heard it from me. This is where the physician or the care team is supposed to be the one to say what needs to happen. And my job, too, was to step in front of the caregiver. You know, if somebody was deciding that they were dumping on somebody, it's usually the oldest daughter, the youngest daughter, or if there's no daughters, it's the oldest son's wife. But it was my job as a physician. I mean, I had a woman who wanted to take care of her mother. Her mother was coming to visit, and she had been taking care of her husband's mother, and all the siblings were letting her do this. And when she told me what she wanted, I had a family conference and said, she's not going to be available for 2 weeks. What are y'all going to do? It's not, this is what's going to happen. She's going to fly out and go get her mother and drive. This is what's happening. So given that this is happening, what are you going to do? And that code allows you to do that. And so this is the kind of thing, and we as geriatricians are trained this way. We're trained to do this. We're trained with this family dynamic issue. And a lot of times, if it's not the physician, the social worker can do it because they also have that kind of training. But I did family conferences all the time. And that was the point. This is what's going to happen. Okay, who's doing 8 to noon? Who's doing noon to 4? And so it happened in the course of that therapeutic intervention. And it's a lot easier. I'm not saying that you don't have to do it over and over. I'm not saying it's going to work the first time. But I think the biggest thing is to try to take that underlying little girl hurt and deal with that somewhere else.
Terrific advice. Most of us don't have a Dr. Cheryl Woodson in lockstep with us. And in some cases, and certainly in my case, the physicians were not helpful as you've described. So as caregivers, we may be fighting the system as well as the siblings, and the person being cared for is completely oblivious to all of it and simply says, don't fight, stop fighting. What do you
That's where I think elder care consultants come in. There's an organization called Aging Life Care Association, and aginglifecare.org, you put in your zip code and it will spit out a list of certified geriatric care managers who are in 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles, whatever you ask. These people, there's a certification to get on the site. So anybody whose name is on the site is somebody who has training. And there are different levels. You know, there are newer people and senior people, and you get to decide how you want to do this. But they can take that role. They can talk to the physicians and sit down and do family meetings. But they also, I call them rent-a-daughters. They do what you would do if you had full time to do it. But they cut all the red tape. Has anybody been in a hospital where a nurse or a social worker came and laid a 3-inch thick list of nursing homes on the side? Elder care consultants talk to you, they talk to the person who's getting the care, and they put together a care plan based on what the level of care is, your values, your resources. They know the VA, they know the local community, and they can save you so much time. And they're really good at working at this family dynamic issue. Again, it can't be the caregiver telling everybody what to do. It needs to be the professional telling them. And I think that's the best way to do it. And they are a lifesaver. And it's a lifesaver for long distance caregivers for sure, because they're on the ground, your eyes and ears. I've seen families chip in to pay for this. I think it's the best money you can spend.
That's fantastic. I want to stay on the sibling stuff from your point of view. What mistakes in terms of communication do caregivers or family care teams make in dealing with each other? Is it information? Is it tone of voice? Is it the tell, right? Don't ask, don't tell kind of thing. What are the mistakes we make?
The mistakes you make is bringing your childhood interpersonal problems in, you know, and the fourth key to caregiver survival is if you don't want to have to drive all the time, you got to take your hands off the steering wheel. You have to let people help you. So do you care whether it's the blue shirt or the green shirt? Why do you care whether it's chicken salad or tuna salad? We end up telling people rather than asking what they will do and valuing that. And just refocusing on what we agree on, which is that we all want to give good care.
So one last question, and then I'm going to open it up. We could talk for hours, obviously, but so you have the benefit of being a physician, and you had that sort of credibility in dealing with your mother and your family. No, you were still the daughter.
I'm the little girl cousin. You know, they surrounded me and said, she doesn't want to leave. And I said, I don't care what she wants, you know. And your credentials don't matter when it's your mother, when it's your mommy. So that's, again, why you have your own support team to back you up for that. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, no, and that's exactly the point, right? It's like when mom says, I'm not going, where my family right now is dealing with an aunt in Arkansas. She's not coming back to Wisconsin. No way, no how. And the kids are kind of tap dancing around it. They don't want to piss each other off, forgive my language, and they also don't want mom to be mad at one of them when this outcome is ultimately achieved. What I've heard you say over and over again, doesn't matter. Does not matter. Get it done.
But you also have to understand that sometimes you can't. And sometimes things have to get worse before they're going to get better.
So say more about that. That's the part where the uncertainty, too much, too fast, too slow.
Yeah, there's this just happened. A friend from New York called me because her friend was in her house and the food everybody left was still on the doorstep. She wouldn't come out. And the paramedics came, she wouldn't go. She kept saying, I'm fine, I'm wonderful, I'm not going to do this. And they had to wait until she was unconscious on the floor. You do everything you can, and then you have to say, this is all I can do. And this is what I will do when I can do something. And they got the landlord. Nobody heard from her for a day. The landlord went in and found her. They took her to the hospital and they had the plan going, you know. But sometimes, I always say God always answers prayer. Sometimes the answer is no, or not yet. Do the best you can.
And that particular discipline, I think, is probably one of the most challenging. There are a lot of challenges, right, in this whole caregiving journey. But knowing when you've done what you can and now you have to allow time to take it to the next place. That's tough.
And I think that's where having a caregiver support group is important, because there'll be people who are farther along the path than you are, who can tell you how they dealt with that. And they can hear your ranting and hear all the things that are useless in the care system, but you need to get it out. They can help support you with that. The other thing about being in a caregiver support group is after you've been there for a while, when the new people come in, you realize you can help them, and maybe you're not doing as bad as you think you are. You know, maybe you do know more than you thought.
That's fantastic.
The key is don't isolate. Do not isolate. You are not, this is the second key to caregiver survival is take the S off your chest or step away from the kryptonite. You are not super caregiver, you know. You do need help and you want to reach out. Do not isolate, because that's when it gets impossible and dangerous for you, because we're nurturers and we value that about ourselves, and we're going to give until it hurts. But you are not supposed to give until you are damaged. That's not how that works.
You know, it's interesting. We talk about that. And really, frankly, one of the reasons we started this homely little gathering is because the natural tendency is to isolate. And we talk a little bit about, you know, coping behaviors, whether it's working out or binging on Netflix or drinking or eating or whatever it is, and to give ourselves the grace of allowing some of those behaviors to cope until they start taking on a life of their own. And how do you advise people, Cheryl, as a physician, what do you watch for? I think most of us know it's kind of like, whoa, this is, you know, not healthy. But what are some of the things that you have seen develop sort of innocently until they become really detrimental?
Well, I tried to get ahead of that. And this is, in March, we're going to talk about my other book, Dear Lauren, Love Mom. And there's an affirmation in there about being kind to yourself. And in the workbook, what I ask people to answer this question, if somebody told you the story you just told me, would you use any of those words and labels that you've just given yourself about them? Would you call them lazy? Would you call them weak? Would you call them? And if you can hold yourself to the standard that you would give somebody else, you're more likely to reach for help. But when I used to ask caregivers, when's the last time you went to the movies? When's the last time you had a date with your husband? And if they can't answer those questions, I know there's already a problem. Or if you start strategizing, well, this is how we can get some help so you can go do blah, blah. And if people don't want to get help, we know there's already a problem.
Okay. Well, it's important. And I think for all of us on the journey, over the journey, likely to approach it is to really be good at noticing things, whether we say them out loud, but we ought to have a means of recording. I'm noticing that, because then we can describe what we're seeing rather than how we're emotionally impacted.
But I think it's also it needs to be in the culture of your support group. This is just what we do. We go to the movies. You don't have to wait until it's a problem. It just is. This is what are we doing outside of being caregivers? It's like giving people permission to have a life. Yeah. Or permission to realize they're more than caregivers. It can just be in the culture.
Fantastic. I will stop myself, even though that's hard, and invite questions, comments. If you have a question for Dr. Woodson or want to make a comment, please unmute yourself and hop right in.
Well, this is exciting. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Susan. And Dr. Woodson, I've connected with you on LinkedIn.
I know, and I recognize your face. Nice to see you, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, when Susan mentioned that you would be on, I said, whatever I'm doing tonight is to the side. But
thank you.
It's just so important what you're saying. My mom did not have Alzheimer's, but she was bedridden. And I was the long distance caregiver. I was in New Jersey. She was in Illinois. My sister was the primary. And so did all the things for her. And I mean, I'm listening to the sibling thing because she was my year younger sister. And yet she had been taking care of mom all these years. And then I moved back to try to be helpful. And I'm a clinical social worker, been the therapist for years. And that was just had to be parked outside the door, because I was definitely second string. And once I understood that and realized that, then it helped a lot to just be able to, how do I work with my sister in a way that allows her to maintain her top dog status? That's fine.
It really is about, if you want to be queen of that, you got it. You really have to move your ego someplace else.
You're living with mom, you want to. I do not ever want that. For me, the symbiotic stuff was going on, the enmeshment. And what happened is when I realized the money was causing some, the money was an issue, because there should not have been a person who's bedridden that the mattress goes down, because electricity isn't paid, the air mattress. And that caused me to have some real, I got to get involved more. But your
social work training doesn't help you.
No.
Ask her, what do you need, rather than go in and tell her this.
And what I did was I said, well, you can talk to some of those creditors and all those other folks, but out of that, God's plan is beautiful. I became a daily money manager as an encore career, because I realized people need this kind of help. The caregivers are burdened already with so much. And if I can take care of the mail and open it up, this is not like expertise here. I'm just opening up the mail. It would help her. And is that helpful, Bun, to my sister? Well, sure, you take care of that. Just don't mess with what's going on here.
So you have to find out what she wants and how much she's going to let go. and not do the I'm the big sister social work thing, because that was going to go away.
I mean, she would go around bragging about me to them. This is my sister, the social worker.
Until you got close to her stuff.
And then what happened was when Mom said, I'm ready to go. I'm 92 years, I'm ready to go. And it wasn't until a caregiver came in and said that we were trying to hire that she kept pushing them back. I can take care of all this. Then I realized she wasn't ready. And the caregiver told us. They were a Ghanaian couple, beautiful couple. And my sister found everything wrong with them. And they said, after a few minutes with your mother, she is ready to move on. But it's something here that's causing her to stay. I mean, they pinpointed it within minutes. And I realized I'm letting my mother go every time I see her. I'm saying, Mom, if you need to go, I understand. I love you. And because I'd be coming back to Madison. And my sister was saying, I don't want to wake up and have her dead. I'm living with her. And that's when it became crystal clear. You better back up because she's not willing unless you're going to switch places. So what you're saying is just so crucial. And I so appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
As I said, there is a chapter in the book on whose stuff is this anyway, to help people deal with that side of it.
Yeah, but you know what? Sometimes I just don't want to be the adult. I don't want to be that one.
Yeah, you know what? But that's the thing about adulting, is doing stuff you don't want to do. That's what it means to be an adult.
So
I'm sorry.
Other questions? Hilda, are you ready to jump in? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay. All right. Well, I'm an only kid, so I don't have any siblings to deal with, but I do have some very, well, how can I say it? Just aunts, sisters of my mother who think they all know everything, and they've given me a hard time for a long time. But anyway, my mom's been up here with me. She lives about 5 hours away, but with COVID, it was easy for me to bring her and keep her here to keep her safe. Not that she's happy about it. She's happy most of the time, but in her mind is, I want to live in my condo back home. And we'll go, and she'll be reasonably patient being here. Was we take care of her. My husband's awesome. So we constantly, give her meals and do everything for her, take care of her medical needs, take care of her money, all that stuff. But underneath, it's like there's that desire to go back to her condo. And so it'll be maybe 3 months and all of a sudden there's an outburst, right? And you can't keep me and you're forcing me, and and then she'll get on the phone as soon as she, if we go out for a minute, she'll get on the phone, call her friends. And I mean, I think that's typical. They'll call and say, oh yeah, she's, I'm going to go back home, but she won't let me, or whatever, ever. So I'm dealing with that. And I'm listening to, I didn't get to catch everything you were saying, but sometimes it's just so difficult. I'm just like trying.
Can she go home?
She cannot hardly walk. Her safety wise, that's why, if she could, I do have a friend that did help me for a while there, when a person that I worked with who would come over, but there's not a full-time caregiver there. And she thinks in her mind that she's physically able to do whatever, but she can barely, she had a hip injury and her walking has gotten progressively bad where she doesn't want to use her walker, because she still thinks that she's, 20. And the thing with my mother is this is this reality. My mother has always been the kind of person that people will take advantage of. She's a very giving kind of person. She trusts everybody, and people have taken advantage of her in the past. And so, I worry, because if I find someone that I don't know, I can already see it happening. I can already see her being taken advantage of. It's just how she is.
Well, I see the pain in your face about this. It hurts for her to be telling people that you're mistreating her when you are doing absolutely everything you can to make her life happy. And I know that hurts, and I understand that. If the reality, though, is that she is not safe in another environment, then you're doing the best. And you have to hear what she's saying with big kid ears.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's what's really helped me tonight is listening to you with the big kid ears.
Yeah, it's you're not 8. You're not.
I know I'm not.
18,
but I've been taking care of her all my life, it seems.
Right. And you got satisfaction from that, and you were being a good girl, you were being a good kid, and she's not recognizing it. And that hurts. That hurts. And I understand that. In terms of the other people, one of the caveats in don't ask, don't tell won't work is they have to show up or shut up. If they're not going to help you take care of it, they don't get to say that. And you can be really nice about it so you can still talk to them, but this is what we have to do. And again, that level of care prescription, the doctor said, and so this is what we're doing. But that pain of not having her approval is a real thing. It's a real thing. And having a counselor work that through with you is a really important thing. And you deserve it. You deserve that. You don't deserve to have the pain that I'm seeing in your face.
Thank you.
Very kind. So, Cheryl, the level of care prescription, what's your website where we can go find
It's www.drcherylwoodson.com. And you'll sign in and give me your email address, and then you can download this. And when I get your email address, I'm not going to be spamming you or anything, but I will there'll be discounts on the courses that I'm going to be putting up. There's a sample chapter that you can download called How to Live Out Loud and Age Excellently. There's lots of little things that you will get from being part of my community. But in that caregiver survival kit is the 5 keys, the level of care prescription, a form called, you should know these numbers like you know your social security number. This is the form you take to your doctor to make sure you're getting all of the healthcare screenings you're supposed to have. Then there's also a medication management sheet that keeps you from missing doses, running out of prescriptions. And Bernie is a good friend of mine, Bernie Ryan, who was taking care of her parents. And she had Irish Catholic family. Some of her siblings were in Ireland. And when they came to provide transportation, Bernie had a book that went with the seniors. And it had a place where she could ask all her questions. And there are people who will charge you $50, $75 to put this book together. Bernie taught me how to do it out of the dollar store. And now you can do it on your computer. It's just a way to organize personal health information so you don't lose things. And whoever provides transportation has the book so that they don't have to answer questions. And it makes your life a lot easier. So all of those things are in the packet and you can download them.
It's fantastic.
Thank you.
We have another couple of minutes here. Other questions, comment? We'll open the floor.
Moments of joy.
Yeah. That's an excellent one.
A moment of joy for me is, has anybody seen Encanto?
Oh,
If you have not seen Encanto, that's going to give you a moment of joy. You will laugh and cry and dance through the whole thing. If you can't think of something joyous, watch Encanto.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Rod. Last call. Question, comment, Bobby?
Well, I'm your mother. I mean, I'm your mother. I'm the person that you're talking about who needs the caregivers, only I'm not quite there yet. But I wish I could have a recording of this to just hand to my daughters in the event that they need it.
Well, there is a chapter in The Doctor Is In called Prepare to Care that will get them ready to do whatever you need them to do. The biggest thing you can do, though, for them is to do your advance directive.
I've got all that done.
Okay, good. But are we talking to people about it so that they understand the conditions under which you would think it's worth living? It's not about dying. They need to be able to know what you would want, to have that conversation with them. My Aunt Terry was just very, very sick, and we had to make some difficult decisions, but she had told us how she would be comfortable living. And it freed us. It freed us more than that paper would have done, because we had the conversation. Mom said X, and that'll make their lives
Do you know
lighter.
what the 5 wishes is? Have you seen the 5 wishes?
I have.
Well, I have filled that out, and some of it is legally binding. It's sort of your living will, but it also has a lot of stuff in it about how you want to be cared for and how you see your later years.
The paper is fine, but this has to be an ongoing conversation. They have to be comfortable talking to you about it.
Well, that's kind of the problem, because the daughter I've had this ongoing conversation with is in another city. And now I'm living with the daughter who can't even think about the fact that I might die. I mean, fortunately, her husband is a physician's assistant, and I just handed him everything and said, she's my representative, but you're going to have to handle it because she can't. And I'm fine, but I'm not going to be fine forever.
Right. But, in terms of what you're going to give your daughters, give them copies of both books.
Oh, okay.
It's very readable. It's very acceptable. It's not doctor speak. It's daughter speak.
Okay. And they're called what?
To Survive Caregiving, A Daughter's Experience, A Doctor's Advice. And the doctor is in, answering your questions about how to survive caregiving.
The 2 that are right behind Cheryl. Yeah.
Okay.
And Bobby, to your question about you wish you would have a recording, your wish will be granted. We are recording this. It will be on susanamarshall.com. You can go there. You can take them there with you. You can see it as many times as you wish.
Fabulous. Okay. It's really been a pleasure.
Well, thank you for having me, all of you. I appreciate your time.
Very, very grateful, Cheryl. We will see you again in March. February 22nd, Bobby will be with us. She wrote a book called How to Age with Grace. So she's going to talk to us from her lens on all of this. So thank you all for coming. Please join us again, susanamarshall.com for the recording. If you have questions, suggestions, or there's someone you'd really like to have us invite as a speaker, Susan at susanamarshall.com. Shoot me a note.